Hey, Spinks from QuietKat. In this video, we're going to show you how to properly wash your bike so that you can do this at home and keep everything running nice and clean, nice and smooth. So one of the most frequently asked questions we get is, can you spray this with water? And absolutely, you can spray it with water. You can use a hose. You don't want to use something that's super high pressure. Something that's super high pressure could get into the small electronic parts, into the motor and battery. So we want to avoid that. There are some pressure washers out there specifically designed for bicycles, so we encourage you to take a look at those. Our friends over at Muck-Off make a great power washer, and that's what we'll be using today to hose down the bike. One of the best things you can do to keep your bike up and running is keep it clean and keep it lubricated. So we're gonna go through all the steps today on how to rinse everything down, how to clean it, what chemicals to use, and what things you want to avoid. So to start, what we're gonna do is just rinse the whole entire bike. We're gonna get all of this loose dirt off of here, get as much off as we possibly can through rinsing. We'll add a little bit of soap to the mix. We'll give it a good wipe down, and then we'll come back and lubricate the chain and the drivetrain components. And remember, we're trying to avoid getting any oil or any grease anywhere near the braking components. Soap and water is okay, but we don't want to use any other chemicals near the brakes. So we're going to start going from front to back and from the handlebars down to the rear tire. I like to use the technique of starting at the front of the bike and working our way back. That way we know we haven't missed anything. So let's start by giving this a good rinse down. So we'll go ahead and start by giving us a good spray. Again, starting out towards the front. We'll get the forks all around the wheels. And we're just using water right now, no soap or anything. We want to avoid too much spray around the battery and motor area, so we'll lightly rinse them. Get both sides of the bike. And you can see I'm spraying downward. This helps you be able to get a good angle on everything and also not get water everywhere. So one of the cool things about the Muck-Off power washer is I can go ahead and put the soap right on in. If you have the ability to add a soap bottle like this, it's a great addition. It's going to take absolutely no time at all. Otherwise, this is the time to go ahead and get that soapy rag into that bucket and put some soap down onto the bike, and then we'll give her a good wipe down. So now we're going to use our microfiber cloth. It's really recommended to use something that's microfiber and lint free. Don't want to use paper towels or something that's got a lot of lint. It's going to leave behind a lot of residue. I'm going to go ahead and just get it a little bit wet, and then we'll go and start wiping down the bike. Again, we'll start at the top of the handlebars. We'll get the display across the bars, each one of our controls and grips. We'll slowly start working our way down the head tube, each individual fork leg. And it's important when you're doing the fork legs to go ahead and get all of the grease out of the lower part on this particular version. If you have a standard style fork where you have the sliders up top, again, you want to make sure to get all that grease out of there. The wheels can be a little bit tricky. I like to wrap around the rim in a line. We can do that on both the front and the back. Locate the valve stem and then just start working from the valve stem between the spokes. And if you start and end at the valve stem, then you always know where you've started. So when you get back around, you know you're done. While we're down here with our hands on the wheels, it's a good idea to just go ahead and give a quick squeeze of the spokes. They should all feel the same. If any of them feel different, it'd be pretty obvious if it's feeling much looser or much tighter than the rest, in case we need to make an adjustment. Good on the front wheel, moving on down tube, top tube, motor assembly, get up underneath the battery. We know all sorts of mud likes to cake up in there. Around the rear suspension, same thing, just like on the fork. If you have a rear shock on your bike, you want to get down to this slider and up towards that seal on that air can. Wipe away any grease, dirt, or debris. Don't want anything rubbing in there, causing damage to those seals. All the way through the pedals. Kind of get into the chainring spider a little bit there. Couple little nooks and crannies here. It helps to have smaller fingers. You can sometimes use a small screwdriver on the end of the rag just to be able to get it to fit into these little areas. Not super crucial right now. We just want to at least get our rag in there to wipe down some of the soap. And we'll get the rear wheel. Back side of the rear wheel. And you can see I'm lifting the bike slightly to the kickstand and rotating the wheel backwards. And that's going to allow me to get access to the whole rear wheel and not have to fight with it in the frame. So when I get up to here, just lean the bike back on the kickstand, rotate the wheel backwards, bring everything to me, make it just a little bit easier. Again, we get in between the spokes, just kind of looking, feeling. Is there anything wrong? Is there anything off? Good rule of thumb is the things that are not supposed to be moving should not be moving. Things that are supposed to be moving, we want to make sure they're moving nice and freely. So everything here looks pretty good. Spokes are all in good shape. We've got the back of the seat post. So this looks good. We've given it a pretty good wipe down, and as you can see, a big difference from where we started. We had it all muddy. Now we've got it nice and clean. So next we can start working on the drivetrain, and for that we're going to use a little special product. So here at QuietKat we use the Muck Off products. They have some really fantastic soaps and also other cleaners designed for specific parts of the bicycle, and they're all designed specifically for bicycles, and they're environmentally friendly. One of the best products is their small drivetrain cleaner here, and as you can see, this comes in a squirt bottle as opposed to a spray bottle. And there's good reason for that. When we go spraying all over our drivetrain, it's inevitably going to pick up the grease, the grime, and that could carry it right through the spokes all over the brake rotor. And if we put that grease and grime all over the brake rotor, we're going to ruin our brakes. So having this nice squirt formula makes it a lot easier to get in here to clean this chain. So one of the things about the e-bike is when we pedal it backwards, that it has a free wheel here in the mid-drive system. So that's not going to move the chain backwards. If you have a hub drive bike, you will be able to move the pedal backwards to move the chain just like you would on a traditional bike. But on the full suspensions, we're actually going to lean the bike up to the kickstand. I put the saddle against my hip here. That way I can hold the bike nice and stable. Then I can rotate it forward. So since we can't pedal the bike backwards to move the chain, we're gonna have to do it forward. So the first thing we're gonna do is come up here to the top of the display and make sure that the bike is powered off. You can also remove the battery for extra safety because we don't want this thing to take off while we have our hands down there. So making sure that it's off or the battery is removed, we'll lean the bike backwards on the kickstand. I like to lean it against my hip here. That way when we reach down, we can rotate the pedals and the chain's moving. So with our cleaner over the top of the chain ring, we're just gonna squirt some of that in there. One good rotation of the chain. And as you can see, we've used barely any of the cleaner. A little bit goes a long way. We just want to get the chain coated so that we can take our rag, and through the same process, we're just going to grab it down low here, pedal the bike forward, and just ever so slightly with just a little bit of tension on the rag, wipe that chain down. Now that the chain is nice and clean, we can add some lubricant. So selecting the chain lube is going to be based on your terrain. We're out here in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains where it's really dry, so we're going to use a dry chain lube. If you're in an area that has a lot of moisture, a lot of rain, or you're dealing with late spring or early fall conditions where you got a lot of slop out there, that's when you'll want to use a wet chain lube. A wet chain lube is going to repel the water and be very hydrophobic, whereas a dry chain lube is going to help to avoid all of the dust from caking up onto the chain itself. So just like we added the cleaner, So go ahead and lean the bike up on the kickstand, saddle against the hip, bring the bottle down just above the chain ring, light squeeze of the bottle as we move the chain, and again, a little bit goes a long way. We just want to get that chain coated all the way across. You notice I'm going pretty slow, not moving the system too much. We don't want to flick that lubrication off of the chain and again, run the risk of contaminating our brake components. So we'll put the lid back on here. And again, I'm just going to bring the bike up onto the kickstand so the rear wheel can spin. And I'm just going to very slowly pedal the bike and then shift through the gears. And the reason for this is we want to open up all of the spaces for that lubricant to get into. Not going very fast. Again, we don't want centrifugal force to throw that lubrication off the chain. We want it to soak into all the little crevices and let the movement of the chain draw the lubricant down inside all of the spaces between the chain pins and the chain links. Get to the bottom, go back up again. Again, nice and slow. Then we're just going to let that set for a minute. Grab the same lubrication again, and we're just going to come down here to these pulley wheels. I'm just going to add a little dab on that pulley wheel there, and then coming up here, add a little bit above here, and then we'll go back to rotating through just to get that lubricant to find its way into those little areas. Again, very, very important. Do not allow the lubricant or any other chemicals to come in contact with the brake rotor or the brake pads. If you do find yourself contaminating your brake rotors or your brake pads, the best thing to do is remove them from the bike, soak them in isopropyl alcohol, give them a good cleaning with some brake parts cleaner, and then we can reinstall them. There's no guarantee that the brake pads will come back, but that's the best we can do. The issue is mostly with the brake pad. When the brake pads are contaminated, they lose their ability to generate friction to be able to slow the bike down. So it's very important that we maintain the health of the brake pads, and we do that by making sure all of our braking surfaces are clean. Soap and water is the best thing to clean them with. If you do find a little contamination, isopropyl alcohol can help. They do have some brake parts cleaner at the auto parts store. However, you want to avoid having that come in contact with any other part of the bike, as those chemicals can be very hazardous. So we'll go back with our rag, and we're just going to wipe off any excess lubricant that might be hanging out there, again, to make sure that it can't flick off and contaminate our brakes. And just give a nice little wipe. And now we're good to go. So there's all sorts of products out there for cleaning your bike. We just went through a simple soap and water. There's a number of brushing kits that you can get to help you get to these smaller areas. It also has the toothbrush up here on top to really get into the chain. The longer brush, again, for the gears. So if you're really, really gunky and really nasty, these brushes can help go a long way. As you can see, we've got a couple other sizes. You can also use the kitchen brush, but check to make sure that you're not going to use it for dishes again, because once you've used it on a bike, it's pretty much not going back in the kitchen. So like I said, there's a number of different things out there for washing your bike, made by all sorts of different bike companies. We prefer the Muck Off product because it works exceptionally well and it's environmentally friendly. Keep your bike clean, keep it lubricated, and your bike will last a lifetime. For more information, check us out at QuietKat.com, and we'll see you out on the trail.